So in the first rounds of question, I would pose to the panelists, in pursuit of this so-called low carbon economy, we have heard that natural gas has already demonstrated its effectiveness in reducing emissions quickly as a substitute for the so-called high-emitting fossil fuels, mainly coal. And this was a major driver as far as greenhouse gas emissions or reduction in many parts of the world. So my question perhaps to Dave first. Welcome, Dave, to this session. How can policymakers reconcile the benefits of natural gas as part of the energy mix in meeting the so-called net zero carbon aspiration?
Gas plays a critical role, especially in transition now. The technologies to complement that are not fully at scale yet. They will come, over the decades. I'm confident that they will. And in the interim, steering that mix with a key part in gas supporting the grid transition is a critical one where policies play a key role. And the final point I would say is Malaysia specifically, to your point, Dr. about the IEA projections on net zero and the assumptions on that they've made on gas peaking and rapidly declining. There's also a de-average point in that different countries will have a very different pathway on this. And Malaysia is quite blessed with having the natural gas resource, which enables a more efficient transition.
Perhaps the next question is actually for Encik Alizan. We understand that the UK was amongst the first countries to pledge a net zero emission target. But we know that recently we have seen that the UK increasingly turning back to coal-fired power plants amidst lower power output from wind turbines, and also the rising gas prices have shot the roof. And some call it actually an energy crisis. Now, Malaysia have just made the commitment to achieve carbon neutral as early as 2050. Now, the question for us is that how can we in Malaysia best manage our carbon neutrality ambition while facing a possible global energy crisis?
The energy transition will have to be seen in a complex and sophisticated manner. It's not really a black or white question. It's not really if or all or which specific technology. So this is the first point. In the context of Malaysia, in the short term, as a gas-producing country, the current energy crisis should not be a major problem. We have a diversified energy mix, including, of course, natural gas, but also hydro, solar, and increasingly renewables. For coal, although coal has also increased in prices, we have long-term supply contracts, specifically for natural gas. We have, of course, Petronas, which is we all know, a government-linked company. So, in other words, these factors, makes Malaysia not fully exposed to the international market prices in terms of energy security. So, I think in the short term, Malaysia is not in the same context of the UK. But in the long term, however, we do see a volatility of the fossil fuel industry and, of course, prices of both natural gas and oil as well. And there are transition risks that come with the global energy transitions towards cleaner sources of energy. So this does show that to ensure energy security and stability in the future, there is a need to have a comprehensive strategy whereby we scale up renewable and clean energy and at the same time ensure stability. Specifically, this will require addressing the issue of intermittency, of course, as Dave mentioned, of renewable energy. But more generally, the major lesson here is that the transition cannot happen overnight. It requires a holistic and comprehensive transition plans that lays out the roadmap towards being a carbon neutral country within each country's context.
Let me go to Dr. Nuki. I've mentioned that not all countries in the world are of equal economic standing. And ahead of COP26, many developed countries have committed to achieve net zero by 2050. The question I posed to Dr. Nuki is that ASEAN member states are essentially developing nations. And what could the policymakers in these developing countries, the ASEAN region specifically, to be able to do in the same sort of transition pathway. What are your thoughts on this?
Looking at those perspective in terms of the policy and an aspirational target, which is on the AIM3 interconnection, we are aiming to achieve 35% RE in the installed power capacity in 2025, meaning that not only coal as a base load capacity, but we need also at the same time providing some power generation coming from gas, which is can go along with this intermittency issues if we're looking at on the perspective of the some VRE. Apart from the RE, which is hydro and geothermal, which is also will be increases in the next 20 years up until 2040. I think that's a very important things that we have to think about, because most of the member states right now is focusing on the economic recovery, less focusing on the energy sectors. If we're looking at more investment and high cost of the energy supply, that's something that I think is quite obvious if we're looking at in the economic growth that recently is less than what we predicted 2 years or 3 years back. So it is very pragmatic point of view that that we have to go ahead looking at first the economic perspective and then goes in the energy issues. But of course, we already discussed on that matters, and something that a bit surprising is that in 2020 alone, the new installed power capacity in Southeast Asia, 80% is dominated coming from the renewable energy. So meaning that approximately 19 gigawatt and mostly coming from Vietnam. So meaning that the region already go ahead on those direction. At the same time, we have to really considering, because we cannot really choosing this comparing to others and avoiding others. We have to really choosing all of those supply or primary energy supply at the same time. So the security issues is important. We have to really make sure that it is evenly supplied by all of this potential indigenous primary energy supply. That's that. Thank you.